Hi there, I'm Renee, and for this week's video, I'll be talking about how I learned a little bit of Japanese throughout the course of 1 month. Today, I wouldn't really be showing my face because, I didn't feel like it, so it's just me doing a voiceover right now. So I started learning Japanese. Okay, I didn't really start learning Japanese, but previously, a year back, I actually learned hiragana, and that is like the basic characters of Japanese. And I kind of gave up because katakana was too difficult. But during my summer this year, I was feeling productive, so I decided to pick up learning Japanese again. Technically, I've already learned Japanese for more than a month now, and I want to make this video to share about my journey in terms of learning Japanese, and I hope that this video will be useful to you if you are planning to learn Japanese or if you're trying to learn a different language. So just a disclaimer that I only learned a little bit of Japanese because ultimately I've only revised it for a month, and learning a language is very tough, so I don't expect myself to be able to speak fluent Japanese after a month of just revising a few resources that I find online. So yeah, let's get started with the video. Okay, so first let's talk about the resources that I used during this 1 month. So firstly, it's a textbook that was sent to me by my friend, and it's called The Japanese from Zero. This textbook allows me to learn all the hiragana and katakana characters, and we can also learn an extensive range of grammar. This textbook also comes with a workbook, so while you learn, you can write down your answers to the questions that they have provided in the workbook. There's also an answer sheet included at the back of the textbook, which is amazing because why would you have a workbook if you don't have an answer key, right? So you can check your answer after you're done with the questions. So there are 13 lessons in total, and each lesson teaches us a different aspect of Japanese learning. So like for example, lesson 1, they teach us about creating simple sentences. It progresses and becomes more and more difficult to understand. So that's the first resource that I used for learning Japanese. Next is Duolingo. I am pretty sure that a lot of you have heard about Duolingo. If not, it is an app that I downloaded from my app store, and it is actually a really good app for learning a new language, be it Japanese, Korean, or any other language actually. So as I said before, I actually started learning hiragana a year ago, and I started learning it on Duolingo actually. Yeah, I use Duolingo to revise what I've learned in the textbook. So for Duolingo, there are different segments in terms of the type of thing that you want to learn. So like let's say hiragana, there's a hiragana segment, so you can practice hiragana specifically. Yeah, I use it to revise what I've learned in the textbook. A downside to Duolingo that a lot of people actually have mentioned is that it's quite repetitive in terms of the exercise that they give, but I think it's actually quite useful for beginners. So it's kind of like spaced repetition. So when you do one lesson of like a hiragana, you maybe do something else, and then after a few days you come back to it, and then you will be able to learn better by kind of reinforcing the information that you've learned a few days ago. The third resource that I use is actually a website that I somehow found. I don't know where, but I found it somewhere, and it's called JapanesePod101.com. It's actually quite similar to Duolingo, and I use it to revise my hiragana and katakana since the examples given are in the Japanese characters without the romanji. So romanji is like the alphabetical pronunciation of the hiragana and katakana characters, which I don't use often because it doesn't really help in my learning, and I keep finding myself looking at the romanji to make sure that I am saying the right thing. And also, the website is very good in terms of the amount of vocabulary they have as compared to the textbook and Duolingo. So I was able to learn more vocabulary and different kanji words since the textbook doesn't really focus on kanji. Lastly, I have a Muji A5 wooden ring binder, and I love using this ring binder actually because I can easily rearrange my notes in different segments. So for example, I arrange my notes in a way where it's hiragana, then katakana, grammar and vocabulary, and miscellaneous items at the back. I really like to write my notes in this kind of binders because I tend to be actually very messy in terms of my notes, and there are a lot of things that like you learn later on. Like for a normal notebook, right, if you don't allocate enough space, then you end up with having no space if you come across a certain information that you learn in the future. So that's why I enjoy writing my Japanese notes in this ring binder, so I can easily rearrange all my notes even if I end up not having enough space between the different segments. So yeah, that's kind of it for my resources. It's not that many, but I think it's sufficient for my learning. And I don't really recommend having too many resources at a time because I don't think you can juggle between the different resources at once anyway. So yeah. So next we are on to the process of my past month. So a month ago, I decided to relearn my hiragana and start learning katakana. And my friend sent me the PDF of the textbook, and that's how I started revising my hiragana and then start learning my katakana. The main reason why I think I kind of succeeded in terms of learning Japanese every single day for the past month is that I set goals every day. So I have a reminder segment in my phone, and I usually put my to-dos on that reminder list, and I aim to finish everything by the end of that day. So for the textbook, right, as I said before, there were 13 lessons in total, and I aim to finish a lesson every day. Of course, it wasn't really feasible because there are days when I am slightly more busy than the others. I give myself some leeway, so I ended up finishing it in about 2 weeks. And during this period of learning from the textbook, I also use Duolingo simultaneously to revisit my hiragana and katakana characters. So after these 2 weeks, I finally finished the textbook and I moved on to JapanesePod101.com. I think for the website, it taught me more functional Japanese, so like for example, day-to-day conversations, how to speak Japanese to a Japanese. And during this time, I was also on Duolingo and constantly trying to push my ranking higher up on the leaderboard because I am competitive. So yeah, that's kind of what actually happened in the past month. So in general, I spent 2 weeks on the textbook and 2 weeks on JapanesePod101.com. I've been using Duolingo every single day and I do at least one lesson every day. And now let's end off this video with some thoughts of mine. So for this past 1 month, it turned out to be actually shorter than I expected or thought. I'm still constantly trying to revise every single day, even if it's just like for 5 minutes on Duolingo or on Japanese Pod 101. A funny thing is that whenever I see Japanese words on either social media or when I go out and see Japanese restaurants, I try to read the hiragana and katakana words. And if I do actually understand, I get really excited and happy because it kind of shows how my hard work paid off for the past 1 month. And lastly, I want to talk about how I'm going to move on from this 1 month. And I think this is a very important segment because it's difficult to start learning a language, but I think it's even harder to continue learning that language after a few months and ensuring that you actually keep track of the things that you've learned. So yeah, I guess I will continue to use Japanese Pod 101 and Duolingo. I would also aim to build on my vocab and learn more kanji because I think kanji is very important when reading Japanese texts. Lastly, I was recently packing my cupboard of books and notes, and I realized that my aunt actually gave me a Japanese textbook a few years back when I was interested in learning Japanese, and it's called the Japanese for Busy People textbook. And it's a physical book that she bought in a bookstore or something, and she gave it to me because she didn't need it anymore. Maybe I'll learn something new from the textbook too. These are my current plans in terms of moving on from this 1 month of learning Japanese. And hopefully you'll be able to learn something from my experience for the past 1 month. If you have any questions, you can comment down below. And if you enjoyed watching this video, please like it and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next Saturday.